Hare Krishna. Asatsanga Tyaga E Vaishnava Achar Sri Sangi Eka Sadhu Krishna Abhakta R. So this famous verse, it says Asatsanga Tyaga. Asat means materialistic, Sangha means association, and Tyaga means to give up. So this verse says that we should give up materialistic association. So what does that mean? That means to create boundaries. Now, we learn from all universal spiritual teachings that there are two kinds of boundaries: external boundaries and internal boundaries. Now, we all know what external boundaries mean. So what does external boundaries mean? It means that if somebody, you could say, crossed the line too many times on us, or disrespected us or our family, even though we set boundaries, and if they continue to cross that line, then external boundaries mean we may delete their phone number, we may block their phone number, we may unfriend them on Facebook if we have a Facebook account, etc., or we just don't associate with them. So this is known as creating external boundaries, and we've all done that before, naturally. Sometimes we may wrongly assume that others are bad association, but they're not. But the conclusion is that whatever our conception of what bad association is, then naturally we set boundaries. Now, internal boundaries, that's much more difficult. Internal boundaries are yasyasti bhatya bhagavatiya kinchana sarva gunes tatra samasate suraha. Sarva gunes. Internal boundary means good qualities, like the Great Wall of China. So what happened when they built the Great Wall of China? That was meant to create boundaries to keep the enemies on the outside from getting on the inside. So good qualities, sarva gunas, they're like the Great Wall of China. Humility, tolerance, forgiveness. You actually cannot see these good qualities. You cannot see whether somebody actually forgives or not. They're invisible. But it's a necessary invisible boundary. So we cannot, it's like forgiveness, humility, tolerance, mercy, compassion, etc. These are like the Great Wall of China. It's meant to keep the enemies that's on the outside, our vengeance, from getting on the inside. So forgiveness is meant to create internal boundaries. Now, we've all experienced that it's very easy to create external boundaries, but it's not so easy to create internal boundaries. So what does that mean? That means, for example, let's say we have an arch enemy or arch enemies, and our arch enemy may be a million miles away. They may have moved away, or we may have moved away, because that happens in life. Usually, friendships, families, they don't, by the force of time, people are naturally separated from each other due to circumstances. So our enemies, the whole point is our enemies may be a million miles away. But suppose someone only mentions our arch enemies' names, and even worse, if they glorify our arch enemies' names, then what happens? That glorification of our enemy brings us just as much misery as if our enemy was right in a room with us. So what does that mean? That means that as long as we haven't created boundaries on the inside, then there's no use in creating boundaries on the outside. And so that's the much hardest part, and that's the whole purpose of spiritual life. And how do you create boundaries? That's also described. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavita mati hi kriyatam yadi kuto api labhyate tatara lolam api mulyam ekalam jama koti sukrite na labhyate. Lolium, it means we should be greedy for Krishna consciousness, and really Krishna consciousness means to create those internal boundaries. So if we're not greedy, just like if you're building a wall, like the Great Wall of China, or you're doing any construction, they have a timeline, and nobody can become lazy. And there's also something called inspectors to see if you're maintaining that wall, maintaining that building. So it says we should be greedy to create our internal boundaries. And that means to engage in Krishna consciousness, not some of the time, not most of the time, but all of the time. As long as we don't engage in Krishna consciousness all of the time, then that means that our internal enemies will come in and disturb our peace of mind. So this is the conclusion is as mentioned before, as long as we don't create boundaries on the inside, then there's no use in creating boundaries on the outside. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. More can be found in the description.